get a little housekeeping out of the way first. This is a, I want this to be an interactive webinar. It's going to be short. We've only got 30 minutes, but I do want people to ask questions. So take advantage of the Q&A slide or the Q&A button, and go ahead and submit any questions as we go. At the end, we're going to take a little time to answer whatever questions anyone has. If we do go a little over, we will be sending this out as a recording. So if anybody missed the end, don't worry, we'll make sure that you get a copy of it. So introductions, my name is Tim York. I'm co-founder of Cubix Analytics. We are a Workday Adaptive Planning solution provider. We're going to be joined by Matthew Nathan from Workday, Regional Sales Manager, and Sandra Delacroix, Lead FP&A Systems Analyst at eHealth. So agenda today, after we do some introductions, after we've done the introductions, I'll talk a little bit about Cubix, and then I'll let Matt from Workday and Sandra from eHealth talk a little bit about themselves, and Sandra's going to give everyone an overview of their experience using Workday Adaptive Planning at eHealth. And then we'll go into a little bit more detailed discussion about headcount planning, some of the important concepts, and demo some of the features within adaptive planning to give you a sense of how some of the different approaches that can be taken when working out your headcount. So Cubix Analytics. Those of you unfamiliar with us, we are, like I said, a Workday Adaptive Planning solution provider. We're based here in the Silicon Valley, but with a presence throughout the country. Our team is really a mix of financial and data experts with decades of experience implementing adaptive planning across a wide range of industries throughout the US. We feel that our strong financial background, along with our technical expertise, really puts us in a unique position to address issues encountered by our customers' FP&A teams. Let's see. Matt on. Okay, so introducing Matthew Nathan. Matt is a regional sales manager at Workday, who's joining us from Denver. Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining us. You should be able to go ahead and talk. I should be able to hear you now.
Great. Hey, Tim. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yep. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, no, thanks for the introduction. So I just wanted to take 2 minutes. I'm the regional sales manager for Adaptive Insights for our mid-enterprise team. I live and work out of Denver, but cover a few states out in the West. Why I wanted to come on today, and what I mentioned to Tim, was with 5,200 plus customers and what we're kind of seeing, going on, with COVID and this being obviously an unprecedented time, seeing a lot of disruptions. We're all living through these disruptions day by day. We're hearing some just great feedback from our customers, and with thousands of customers, we're able to find out kind of what is going on, how they're, effectively using adaptive, what's the value and what they're benefiting from, during this times, of uncertainty. And so I wanted just to kind of share a couple of those highlights, as I think it's important to understand how customers are able to pivot and adjust during this time. So we kind of looked at, 4 uncertainties, that are driving, 4 key actions during COVID. One being, your plan is no longer valid. Second is the need to identify and isolate business drivers. We're seeing, companies needing to start contingency planning, and then really, not only just execute a replan, but continue to monitor and analyze those plans as well. So if we go to the next slide here. So what we're kind of seeing is, as CFOs start to shift priorities, and lean on their finance team, the adaptive platform can help, respond to allow for our customers to create new what if versions, able to quickly model out several scenarios for each version of your plan. We're seeing a lot of our customers moving to rolling forecast and are able now to do weekly updates, for all their financial plans as well. So we're seeing a lot of these areas, as our customers are being asked to really do things from their CFO or their leadership in a very quick amount of time, where without kind of a planning tool like Adaptive and it being more manual, Excel driven, it's going to take a lot more time to be able to do this course corrections. And then finally, on the next slide here, when kind of things are starting to rebound, Adaptive can definitely help with that recovery. Our customers are able to do plans for company growth, efficiency improvement, strategic workforce planning. So we're really seeing our customers being able to recover and then thrive during this uncertainty. And lastly, and then I'll turn it back over to Tim here, I just wanted to share, we're getting amazing feedback from customers in all industries, but this happens to be Christianacare, one of the largest healthcare providers and healthcare systems in the U.S. And what's remarkable, and they kind of mentioned it, is prior to Adaptive, it would have taken them 4 months to do what they're being able to do in just 4 days, to be able to reforecast, based on what their leadership's asking for. So, this is not an isolated quote from customers, as we're seeing this across the board, just companies being able to pivot, course correct, analyze on the fly, and turn the business kind of visualization around. So just wanted to share that from the Workday perspective, that we're on the forefront kind of helping our customers really kind of pivot during this time. So appreciate the time today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Next up, I want to introduce Sandra Delacroix. She is the lead FP&A analyst at eHealth. eHealth is a leading online marketplace that brings health insurance carriers together with individuals, families, and small businesses. Sandra, thank you for joining us. Sandra, you there? I'm not hearing you. Looks like you're muted, Sandra. Well, we'll try to get back to Sandra in just a little bit. For some reason, I'm not able to unmute her. So what I'll move into first, I want to talk a little bit about planning strategy. And with personnel expenses, often being the biggest expense for any organization, it's really critical to have a clear forecast. Without a good process in place, the best technology in the world isn't going to get you really anywhere. So the first thing that it's important to do is really evaluate your situation, and then identify, what are the biggest factors driving your headcount requirements. The first thing you want to do is, find out what drives headcount and, what's driven by headcount. Some of the examples of costs driven by headcount include obvious ones like payroll taxes and benefits, but they can also include not so obvious ones like IT expenses, office expenses, sales travel, when we used to actually travel. Revenue can also be a driver of headcount, as well as being driven by headcount. Companies that, they might use a rep capacity model for forecasting sales, where, X number of reps leads to Y amount in sales. Or they might use their sales forecast to support requirements that to drive the headcount numbers. Changes to sales, the relationships are really important here. The changes to your sales forecasts change your headcount numbers, which has an effect on operations and all the support that's required for increasing headcounts. And within a model, within a good headcount planning model, you want to make sure to tie these together, if and when those make sense. And then lastly, as part of your strategy, you want to make sure you've got a mechanism for adding adjustments and overrides into your system, because there's always going to be exceptions, and you need to make sure you can capture those and have any changes you make flow seamlessly into the final results. It looks like Sandra is back on. Actually, Sandra, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. So I'm not sure what happened there. So let me.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So yes, thank you for joining us, Sandra. Hope everything's going well for you today.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Okay, yeah, so I'll quickly inform you what we're doing at eHealth. So I'm the finance systems person at eHealth. I'm in charge of Adaptive, so I administer it, develop the models, formulas, handle, with the help of Cubics, the integration of other data sources into it. eHealth has been using Adaptive for about 6 years, and before that we used Hyperion. We switched because we found it too costly and very cumbersome to manage. Our primary use for Adaptive is the forecasting of revenue and operational expenses, so for the P&L. And recently, we also started preparing balance sheet and statement of cash flows. We are also heavy users of Excel plugins, Office Connect, and Planning. And thanks to these, we reduced by a lot our effort and time to prepare packages for the board meetings quarterly. The biggest piece of our OPEX and the hardest to forecast is compensation and benefits. So it's driven by headcount. And also eHealth is a seasonal business. So we have staffing requirements that ebb and flow at different times of the year. So it's very important for our headcount to be very accurate. We track costs associated with current employees, new hires, both incrementals and backfills, terminations, attrition. And in Adaptive, it's a very simple combination of model sheet and assumptions. So with our current headcount setup, we basically can accurately tune and forecast large numbers of hires by just simply adding a few rows in our personnel sheet. So Adaptive made that very easy for us. We also use adaptive assumptions. So for example, we forecast their raises, taxes, benefits by department and geography. So for example, payroll taxes and benefits, they can differ by location. So these rates are very simply entered in separate line items in our assumption sheets. Another way we leverage Adaptive for our headcount is through the use of dashboards. And we use it in a couple of different ways. One is to provide our exec team the visibility to our hiring trends. So they can very easily compare our actual hiring versus our targets. And the other way is also to provide department budget owners a place to view their own performance, and they can make updates to the headcount data. And within dashboards, users also have access to tables that show how headcount has changed or is expected to change over a period of time by department, location, function. And they can basically see starting headcount, hires, to be hired, terminations, ending headcount. And then they use that information to analyze the changes from period to period. And this way we can define, for example, if our hiring is not overly aggressive. So Adaptive has sped up our forecast process I cannot quantify it, but same thing, things that we took us weeks to do are done in, I can say, sometimes just a few hours. We work a lot with Cubics. Cubics Analytics has been really helpful in building our models. And they also helped us to identify areas where we could improve how we were using Adaptive. So that was an amazing help. They helped us like to restructure and simplify some complex models we had. Cubics also set up like the integration part for us, like writing the queries that import like actuals from our ERP, import volumetric data from our Snowflake data warehouse. So we've been having like a great partnership with Cubics team. So yeah, I just end up by saying that I'm a big fan of Adaptive. And because I think Adaptive is so versatile and it's so easy to customize. So I think with the right help of like expert consultants, it can really take your finance team to the next level. And I feel that's what Adaptive and Cubics have done for us over the last year. And they really put our like finance team under the spotlight. So we just had like pleasant experience with Adaptive and all the projects it made us do. So thank you guys.
Great, thank you, Sandra. You know, I also want to say, you know, working with eHealth over the last year and a half has really been a great experience for us as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me move on. So the next thing I wanted to talk about were the multiple approaches that you can take with headcount planning. You know, once you've got your strategy in place, you really want to determine what approach suits your company best. And starting basic, working towards a more detailed and complex model almost always works best. It's really important, you know, not to try to do too much at first. You can always build in more complexity as you move forward. So at a basic level, you know, you first want to identify your obvious payroll related GL accounts. You know, what are the high level assumptions? What are the global assumptions that you need to apply to headcount? Payroll tax rates, benefit plan rates, bonus percentages, et cetera. And then decide what level of detail works for planning. You know, smaller companies, they'll often plan at the employee level, bringing in data directly from HR, HCM systems like Workday or ADP. You know, once companies get larger with more employees, you know, get 5,000, 10,000 employees, it doesn't work as well bringing in the detail. Not that Adaptive can't handle it, because it definitely can. But they might decide for their own benefit and for just ease of working with the data that they start to bring in data at a summary level. You know, and others combine detailed and summary approaches. You know, certain business units might need more detailed employee planning, whereas others are fine at a more summary level. So, you know, when you take a more detailed approach, one thing that really enables taking a very detailed employee specific approach is a seamless integration between your HR systems. Excuse me. Like I said, ADP, Workday, you know, having that system in place, it's really easy to then bring in any attributes that are important for your company's analysis. Things that you might not have thought to bring in the past, demographic information, diversity information, things that, you know, bringing in some of your HR metrics to compare alongside your financial metrics. It's great to have these pieces in place, and with an automated integration scheduled integration running, it's very easy to keep that data up to date. And you know, one thing to point out is salary information inside Adaptive is specifically called out for security purposes. So people that have the right to see it can see it. Those that don't, it's hidden from them. If there's any salary information on a report that's shared with users, all that data is automatically hidden from view. So with that in place, you can also start creating assumptions at a more localized level. So you might want to track payroll tax rates at a country level or a county level. You might have different benefit expenses that are unique to a specific locale. And so when you create these either company-wide, you can do both, company-wide assumptions or locale geographical based assumptions. And then with new hires changes, you can start capturing information side by side, capturing the new hires along with changes to existing employees, all within the same worksheet. And then as your models continue to evolve, you may want to use headcount to drive allocations and other items that are affected by headcount. And as I mentioned earlier, you can build out the number of revenue and expense items that are impacted by headcount and vice versa. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move into a demo of Adaptive here. Let me pull over. So I hope everyone can see this. What I have here is an assumption sheet. Like we were just talking about, this is a company-wide assumption sheet where I have raise percentages, I've got months in which those raises are applied, and all this can be fed into my forecast model to generate expected expenses in future periods. And you can see along the top, I've got each month starting in January 2021. Right now, for this particular demo, we're assuming we're in the 2021 year. I think everybody wants to move past 2020 at this point. So we're working in 2021 right now and forecasting out our headcount related expenses. So you can see here where I got company-wide pension numbers, 401k match numbers, et cetera, that all feed into what my expenses, headcount related expenses will be. Here's an example of a company specific assumption sheet where for Canada, for example, I've got a Canadian pension plan that I need to fund at 4.95% of salaries. And so in my models and my calculations, I can look for employees that belong to, that are in the Canadian region and apply this particular pension plan percent based on their location. And then this is where you can see so what I have here is an actual workforce planning sheet. And what I'm doing here is actually combining a detailed with a summary approach. You can see that I have employee names inside the sheet. And each employee name has their single impact on the model itself. I've got position statuses in here, so this represents the most recent status of a particular employee and will allow us to do different types of reporting and analysis later on. And you can see, so I've got titles, residents. I'm able to pick plan benefits for individual employees, so I can specify if I would be expected to pay plan 1 level rates or up to plan 3 level rates, whether or not they have pension plans, pay rates, et cetera. Salary is in here. Again, with the security of Adaptive, you don't need to worry about salary information getting into the hands of those who aren't allowed to see it. And so as we kind of scroll through, this is our entry. So this is all of the data that would come from our HCM system, or we would import from a spreadsheet, bring in from ADP, et cetera. And you can see here where I've assigned it to specific cost centers. So I've got my cost centers broken out by function and geography. And so by assigning each employee a level, it ensures that their related costs get pushed into the right buckets on analysis. One other aspect of this is the ability to allocate an employee's costs among multiple attributes of that employee. It can be any combination of attributes. And so, for example, if we go down to Rachel Knight here, you can see Rachel is allocated between two different departments, two different levels, as we call them in Adaptive. So she is allocated 80% between the executive department, executive function, and 20% to finance. And so when we do allocations, using Adaptive has very strong allocation functionality and allows us to divide up her related expenses according to these percentages. So that's an overview of the sheet. I'm going to come back into the sheet in just a little bit and show how we use this inside a dashboard. Looking a little closer at the model, you can see I've got here all my calculated accounts. So based on all the data that gets entered from the sheet that I just showed you, we end up being able to calculate specific amounts. And you'll notice in this model, we're actually not using separate assumption sheets. We're actually using, we're putting in local geographic specific calculations directly within the model, which you can see here. And then, oops. And then here's a list in the model sheet itself. You can see the number of entry fields. So these are the fields that get imported, entered into the sheet that drive the calculations that I just showed you. So dashboards. So I think this is really where this is where Adaptive kind of brings some really powerful functionality in review and ability to edit, do write backs. We've got a list of some KPIs. We're showing payroll plan versus last year, year-over-year changes. And you can see that I've got the sheet that I showed you earlier listed or included in this dashboard. And you'll notice I've identified this as editable because I can go in, I can actually just, if I've got one of the things I mentioned earlier was I'm combining summary with detail. And so if I know that a few months out, I'm going to be hiring 5, 10, 20 employees, I've got a seasonal business, and I know that I need to add some employees in the fourth quarter of this year. And I can do that by, I created this factor field that tells me, okay, how many people do I actually need to hire? For every employee, it's 1. But if I'm looking to easily put in that I need to hire, say, 5 or 10 account execs in the UK, I can go in here, edit it, it becomes blue. And once I save this is actually going to drive up. This information is available real time. So built on an Elastic Hypercube, all the data that gets saved inside Adaptive at any time is automatically available across the platform. And so in my working budget right now, I could also make a copy of this version and do some what if analysis, what if scenario analysis. At this point, I'm just going to go ahead and change my working budget and see how it affects. So if I make that change, hit save, you'll notice I'll end up with changes in some of my numbers here, going from 44.7 to 44.5. My yearly target expense increased a little bit, and then might have seen numbers jump up here. If I actually bump this up a little higher, you can see that impact a little more. You can see that impact a little more clearly as we watch the jump in costs going way up in October, just to demonstrate how readily available the data is once it's saved and how quickly it propagates across the platform. So let me take this back down. I'll take this down to 5. The other thing that I can do, and I can pull this out, make this a little bigger. Oops. Let me save my changes. open this up into a more easily used sheet. I'm looking at new hires. I've actually filtered on new hires inside this plan. I can enter a new row. So if I clicked on this button, it will allow me to type in a new row, but to make things move along a little more quickly, I can also copy a row. So I can click copy. It creates a duplicate of that. And let's say that I need these 5 in Texas. And their pay rate is going to be $60,000. They've got similar commission targets. And then everything, and then I'm going to change the level. So here's where I'm putting them into the Sales South region. And same thing as before. Once I save this data is made available across the platform. So close that. Everything updates. One thing that you will see is that my target revenue went up, and this is a result primarily of a combination of how we're doing our forecasting, our sales forecasting inside this instance. Not only do we do some top-down numbers, but top-down forecasting of sales, but we also include some rep capacity-driven numbers. So as I increase the number of account executives, my percent of yearly target went up just a little bit because I'm adding account execs, and what I'm saying inside my model is that results in greater sales. So that's an example of how data can be updated directly within the dashboards. One last thing I'll show is just the creation of a fairly simple table inside Adaptive. You'll notice here I've got a table showing beginning headcounts, hires, terminations, ending headcounts by month. You can also see here I've got payroll costs by function. I've included a GL account along with some of my modeled accounts. Here I'm breaking out the payroll cost by function. Here I'm breaking out the headcount by function, so you can see, what percentage of total expenses are each one of your functions. So, sales and marketing. Here we have services actually being the highest. Sales and marketing comes in at second, 36%. And you can see how that's also showing up here in the beginning, with beginning numbers, ending numbers, and activity during the month. Here's one where I did a scorecard showing variances between, I can show, if I was doing a what if analysis here, I can show the current budget compared to a what if scenario, look at the differences, and even see, a micro chart kind of showing us the trend across the year. Adding a table like this is very straightforward. If I come in here, let's say I want to add a crosstab report, I want to see my sales by, or my headcount by geography. I can go ahead and pull in the accounts here. I've created the crosstab table, and I want to see my accounts in my rows, and I want to run this for the range of January 2021 through December of 2021. And this is going to lock, the period to those numbers. If I come back over here, I'll pull in my accounts. Before, I was in my workforce planning sheet, and if you'll remember, I showed a list of calculated accounts within that modeled sheet, and those are all listed here. And so I can see salary, I can see FTEs. I've created some modeled accounts that show me, okay, what's the beginning period, what's the beginning of the month numbers. I'll bring that in, and then if I want to see the activity during the month, bring that, and there's my ending pool. And like up above, I want to combine a GL account, say, with combine a GL account with one of my model accounts. And so I'm just going to bring in the entire payroll roll up here. I'll drag this down a little bit, expand it some, come over here, and this is where I want to add time. Now I want to see this by month. So you can see I've got for each month my activity feeding from one month feeding into the next month, and you can see beginning equal previous month's ending. Let's see, one last thing I will add here is, what do I want to add? Geography. So we're going to add location to my table, and we'll actually break this out by location. And so now you can see those numbers. So you can see those numbers are now broken out across each geography. Click done, and now it's sitting there inside the. And I can explore this data and I can break it down. If I click and I want to see this broken out by function, I can click on the cell and I can see it actually drilled down by function. So for my Austrian January 2020 numbers, this is how it was broken out by function. And I can continue to break down position status. I can see, okay, how many are active, how many are terminated, etc. And then go back. And then lastly, each of these, one nice thing about the dashboards and Adaptive is I didn't necessarily have to start this from scratch. I can take any widget on the dashboard itself, and if I'm in edit mode, I can duplicate that. And then I can just come in and change how it's set up. Instead of function, I want to see maybe position status. And I can see my actives, my to be hireds, backfills, to be hireds, incremental, etc. I know we're over a little bit. I appreciate everybody staying on, who stayed on. And if there are any questions, I'm going to stay on for a little bit just in case there are some questions. At this point, no open questions. But if anybody has any, let me go back to, wants to reach out to us, we'll send out a recording of this email. Actually, I'm sorry, a question did just come through. If this is an add-on module or if you have it in Adaptive Planning right now, the answer is you have this. This is not any specific module, any kind of separate module inside Adaptive. This is functionality that is out of the box. It's using the standard objects within Adaptive, the modeled sheets, etc. So nothing new that needs to be purchased. Anything else? Anybody else have any questions? Okay. So like I said, we will be sending out a recording of the webinar, a link to the recording of the webinar to everyone who registered and is in attendance, even for those who had to drop off early, and those who couldn't make it, we'll get this out to you. Feel free to come see us on the web at cubicsanalytics.com. Check out our blog.cubicsanalytics.com, or email me, tim@cubicsanalytics.com. Again, we appreciate everybody's attendance, and have a great day. Take care.